My name is Lindsay Brinker. I've been in marketing design for about 12 years, and I've been at Nex-Tech here for a little over half that time. I lead our team of graphic designers, and I oversee the marketing efforts of Nex-Tech. I grew up in Kansas and in a real small town in Kansas. And as part of the grant team here at Nex-Tech, our goal is to build fiber to other small towns in Kansas. So this has ended up being a really rewarding part of my job. And I just want to share with you guys today some tips and tricks that I've learned along the way in that process to help you make your grant writing easier. I want to kick off the conversation with a poll to see how many of you guys on the call have applied for broadband grants and how many grants you may have submitted in the last 5 years. So if you just want to use the chat function and just enter A, B, C, or D to correspond with your answer, and just let us know how active you guys have been in this space. I know there's a lot of government funding out there right now to be had. On this screen is just a quick snapshot of some of the grants, all of the grants, I guess, that Nex-Tech has applied for in the last 4 years, and which of those we've been awarded, along with their acronym. Those probably don't mean a whole lot to anybody, but I did just want to point out a couple things about this. A lot of these, if not all of them, have a very short window between when the applications are posted and the submission deadline. They tend to average 4 to 6 weeks, none of these being longer than a 6-week window. So it's always a pretty quick turnaround time to grab all of that information, to compile it together, answer the questions, and then submit the grant. Also, they're all a little bit different. So if you fill out an application for one, the questions and answers may not align perfectly with the next round of funding that comes out. So if you do carry one over to another, if it doesn't get awarded, there's probably some work in between and some tweaking that you might have to do to those answers to get them to apply to a different grant. I'm not going to necessarily talk today about whether or not you should apply for a grant, but I do want to touch on some tools and strategies that you can use after you've decided to go after some funding to make that a little bit easier. So I do see that we've got an answer in the chat. Jamie says B, 3 to 5 grants. Melissa, C. You guys are busy. I like it. Here's an overview of kind of the things that we're going to talk about today. So throughout the presentation, we're going to answer these 4 questions. Do you have a process, and is that process something that can be replicated each time that you decide to go after funding? What's in your toolbox, and what things do you have at your disposal, or what tools and strategies might you be using elsewhere in your business that can really apply to the grant writing process that you may not have considered? The third point is, why should they choose you? I think this is one of the most important parts, is showing the need and showing that the community or the area that you are applying for really wants you to be the company to build there. So how can we do a better job of demonstrating that? And then what comes at the end? Whether you win or lose, what comes after you apply for grant funding? All right, this is Mr. Smee, for all of you Disney fans out there, from Peter Pan. I'm not talking about pirates, but every time that I mention Smee, this is who comes to mind. So I had to throw him in here. This is something that I want you to think about before a grant window even opens, finding your SMEs and building your grant team. And so SME stands for subject matter expert. And I think it's really important to find those people either within your company or maybe even your contracted partners that can be your subject matter experts in all of the different areas, and bring those people together to build your team that's going to stick with you throughout the grant writing process. So think of the different areas of your company that need to be represented. For a lot of telcos, we are no stranger to this. Your subject matter expert for one area might also be the same person for, another area or two. So somebody in customer service might also be the SME for marketing. But that's not to say that you shouldn't still try to include more people in this process if you can. For several reasons. For myself, I found it really rewarding to be part of a team like this. Even though it's not my day-to-day operations, getting to be involved in writing a grant and ultimately winning a grant has been really rewarding, and it's been fun to be part of this team. It also lightens the load. So if this is something that typically has been a task that has been on the CEO or the general manager, by bringing more people into this process, it can really lower the stress level and lighten that load of work that has to be done. Also, I think it goes without saying, but if you put all of those people on a team together and you have your best minds all coming together, you're going to end up with a stronger application. So think of who those people can be for you, and start to build your dream team. So then the rest of this is what a typical process looks like for Nex-Tech. When we decide to go after some funding, the first thing we do is have a kickoff meeting. We'll typically do this on Teams. It can be in person or on Teams on a shared meeting, but really we're just going over all the requirements, our timeline. We're designating a project manager in that meeting. It doesn't have to be somebody that has project manager as a title or even really has, any certification or skills as a project manager, but you need somebody designated to keep the project moving along. They're going to do things like answer questions, connect people that need to, meet with each other, direct people on where to save documents on, your shared drive. They might check in with people and hold people accountable just to make sure that things keep moving. The biggest part of the process, I think, is delegating. We assign each question of the grant to a specific person so that everybody knows exactly what they're responsible for, and then they can go out and get that information and bring that back. Then we establish what our check-in cadence will be, whether it's weekly or bi-weekly, and get those meetings put on everybody's calendar, and then figure out who is going to bring this all together, who's going to proofread everything and make sure it has a common voice, and then ultimately who will submit it by the deadline. Okay, what's in your toolbox? So whether it's Google Docs or Microsoft Office 365 or SharePoint, having a shared document that everybody can work from at the same time has been hugely beneficial. I included AI in this list also because I think there's some tools that maybe you haven't considered before that you could use AI for when writing grants. Also, I know you all have Facebook pages and websites, and we'll talk more in depth about how you can utilize those in a minute. And then your team. This is how teamwork can make the dream work. So when we are talking about subject matter experts, yes, use your team, but also don't underestimate the connections that your team might have. So chances are, if you're looking to build, fiber into an area that's never had it before, somebody on your team probably has a connection to that area, whether they went to high school there, or they have family that lives there, or they grew up there when they were a kid. Use your team for their connections and have them reach out to people that they know and explain the process and build that network to help you out. This is an example of what one of our shared documents look like. So when we have that kickoff meeting at the beginning of a grant process, we copy and paste every single question on the grant application into a shared Excel file like this. And then we literally put somebody's name to it and assign them to answer that. We include where they should save it on our shared drive. Excuse me. And then we use this to track the status as well. So this has been a game changer in terms of knowing how far we have come, how much we have left to do. We can ask questions and get answers in these meetings based on the information that's in here. And if you remember back from the beginning slide, when we applied for the CPF grant, we submitted 8 applications for that one grant. So we were able to put all 8 of those in their own column and see all 8 and the status and progress on all of those at the same time in this one document. And then AI, a couple of things that I could think of in terms of using AI that might be surprising. One is if you have a bunch of technical jargon or people on your technical teams that aren't used to writing, um, you could use AI to put that information in and have it come up with language that is more easily understood by somebody reviewing the grant. Or if you have people on your team, if you're getting answers from 3 or 4 people on your team, you could run all of those through something like ChatGPT and have it make all of those sound cohesive, like they're coming from one voice. Social media and website. I'm going to tell you a little story on this one. One of the parts of these grants is gathering community support and showing that the people that live in these areas really want you to come in and build infrastructure to them. So in one of our earlier grant applications, in order to do that, we sent out one of our tech supervisors with a petition type paper and a clipboard, and he drove around and went house to house and knocked on doors and got signatures of support for people in the area to help us with our application. It worked, but it was time consuming and a lot of extra on his plate. So since then, we've gotten a little bit smarter and we went digital with this whole process. So most recently, we applied and won a grant for Kerwin, Kansas, which is a really small town. I think Google says they have 41 households in Kerwin. We completed this really simple form on our webpage, just letting people put in their basic information, name, email, phone number, address, and then there's a comment box on there where people can tell us their story or tell us how they would be impacted if they had better service. And then we did a Facebook post to go along with that. I think we spent less than $50. This ran for less than 2 weeks. And you can see there's quite a bit of engagement on there. There's 11 comments, 30 shares. And then some of the results that we got from this, we got 31 web form submissions, which in a town of 41 households is pretty good percentage. I included one of my favorite quotes here. And this, I think, just goes to show the power of social media and the power of a digital form like this. Not only will better internet in Kerwin affect the people that live there, but also the people that come to grandma and grandpa's house and need their baby monitor to work. So we would never have gotten comments like this had we done the door-to-door petition type form. So I think this is a really cool way to show, how to gain that support and then how to demonstrate that in the application. And then kind of piggybacking on that, talking more about how to use those connections and the people that you talk with. These are some things that we typically try to include in every grant application that we do. In that letters of community support section, we find those state legislators that cover those areas and ask them to write a letter of support on our behalf for building there, and we include those. Also, local leaders and organizations. Recently, we were awarded a grant. This is actually that same Kerwin grant in the area that we're looking to build. There's a scout camp. And so we asked the scout camp if they could contribute to the project. And not only were they able to put up a financial contribution, but they got that matched by a local community foundation. And then we also had a donation from the city of Kerwin as well. And we were able to include all 3 of those in the grant application. It doesn't have to be a lot of money, but I think if you can show that people are willing to put up any kind of financial contribution towards your project, it speaks volumes. And then email addresses. After the grant is submitted, there's typically additional phases that it will go through, being public comment, and that's typically on the government website where those will all be posted. Sometimes there's even an interview phase. So by using that web form at the beginning of the process and capturing that information from people, that becomes your target audience for these next steps of the grant, where you can reach out to them, personally email them, let them know the status of it, ask them for a comment of support on the website. And then if you do get to an interview phase, these are the people that have already publicly said, I'm willing to support this, and they'll be perfect advocates to bring into an interview. So let's talk about next steps. First, we'll talk about the bad news. If you're not awarded a grant, don't give up. There are things that you can do to rework or improve it for the next opportunity. So review what you submitted and see if you can find room for improvement. Maybe 4 to 6 weeks was a really short timeline, and with a little bit more time, you could develop it into a much stronger application. You might also get creative and see if you could combine grants together to make a larger one, or even break them apart into smaller ones. And we've done both of these, where we've had a really large area that we maybe broke out into 2 or 3 applications, and then you might get 1 or 2, but maybe you wouldn't have if it was all lumped together. And this last bullet point is something that should just be ongoing at all times, but work to build those strong community relationships. Find those people that are willing to speak up on your behalf, and get those people on your side. And then when you do win a grant, congratulations. I included this term, and it's actually one that a colleague of mine shared with me, avoid anticipation. And I think so many times in this industry, we can get so excited, and we go after this funding, and we win the funding, and we get everybody on board, and they're rallied behind us. And then we have to say, well, it's going to be 18 or 24 months before you actually get connected. So it's really important that you establish the timeline for people and provide realistic milestones so that they know what the process will be. If we're in the trenches all the time and we're building out projects like this, it's really easy to forget that not everybody knows how this process goes. So we have to be very intentional about explaining that to them along the way. And then I want to end with this. When we are awarded grant funding, it's really typical to say, okay, now we got to get to work. Now we got to get to the next thing. And it's so important to stop and celebrate those wins along the way. 2024 for Nex-Tech has been our year of celebration, where we have really tried to recognize all of those little milestones that our team has hit and take a moment to actually celebrate those wins. So in the chat, please tell me how you celebrate your wins with your team. We're always looking for new ways to celebrate our team's success. And I know, we've had a ton of it this year. I'm sure you guys have too. I'll share with you one little thing that we're doing this year that we haven't done before. So we have an overall internet subscriber goal for the company, and we broke that into milestones. And at every milestone along the way, we open up what we call a pop-up shop, and all of our employees get to go shopping for a trinket, essentially. So it could be anything from a coffee mug to an umbrella to a backpack cooler, but something just a little extra, just a little unexpected as a thank you for their time and effort, and to help celebrate and recognize the work that they've done all year.